Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. Today is my Q&A video where I answer your questions. Every week I do this, and you can ask me whatever questions you want. Put it in the comments below, whatever you want, and I will try to answer it to the best of my ability. I got a bunch of really great questions this week, and let's get into them. First comes not really as a question, but I think I want to answer this one, even though it is a question, but not really a question, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean. This comes from SciPic, and he wrote, "Why would you spend all of that money on comic books? I could have bought my dream car with that." So this was this was a comment where somebody was basically criticizing the fact that I was buying all these comics, and that they thought, hey, you could use all that money to buy a cool car or buy whatever, right? But here's the thing: with anything you buy, if it's a luxury like a car or comics in this case, it is for pleasure. Okay, so I get a lot of pleasure from my comics, probably as much pleasure as you would get out of your car. But the good thing about my comics is they go up in value. So it's not only a great way for me to have a little bit of relaxation, enjoy some really great covers and beautiful artwork, but it is something that goes up in value. And I really feel like that is something that people don't realize, that this is a really great hobby for that, that you can get a lot of pleasure from it in terms of it's a luxury, but also it is something that has a pretty good rate of return. Typically, if you kind of want to go across all comics, you get like a return of maybe about 10% on your investment, whereas a car, once you buy it, it pretty much is worth half as much as when you bought it. Once you pull it out of the lot, it's already depreciated, it seems. So that's why I think comics are in a way a better for two things. You can keep on adding new ones to your list of comics that you own, and it's something that you can get a lot of joy out and you can play with all the time, and you can really enjoy it, and at the same time it doesn't go down after you bought it. So that's kind of fun. That's my silly answer to a silly question, basically. Because it's really up to what you like. If you like cars, buy cars. If you like comics, buy comics, at the end of the day. So Mark Webb wrote, "How do you deal with not being able to actually read those slabbed comics?" So this is one of those questions that I hear a lot of, where people say, okay, well, there's the purists out there that will be like, oh, it's in a slab. That's so uncool. Comics are meant to be read, and you're supposed to enjoy your comics. I'm going to be frank, and this is a thing that a lot of comic collectors will not admit, and I will admit because I'm pretty open and honest. I will not read most of my comics. Most. I'll actually say most. There's a lot that I have read, but I just can't keep up with all the books that I have in my collection. I have like 40,000 books, I think, or 30 at least thousand books in my collection. I haven't had the chance to read them all, and I probably will never get a chance because I'm always adding new ones that I should read. So the point is, I buy them not just to read. I buy them because I love the covers. I buy some books purely because of the covers, or because it has a key character in it that I think is cool. So often that pleasure that I get from the book isn't from the fact that I can read it. And really, practically, you can't read all your books all the time anyways, even if you did read them. So having them in the slab offers that security that the book is not going to deteriorate and it's going to be protected. And also it allows me to display the comics easily. So having them in the slab makes it easy to display, then I can view them and really get enjoyment out of them all the time, rather than just having to go through my long boxes, pick out the books and try to look at them. It's a much harder thing. And at the same time, I'm also risking that I might damage the books in the process. So for me, slabbing is kind of the way I like to enjoy my comics. Now, in terms of reading them, I do like to read certain books, and some of them, I do buy them based on the cover, but I'm also curious what the interior is. So what I do is, if I really get curious about what those interiors are, I read the comics online. There's a bunch of sites, like Read Comics Online. Literally is the one of the URLs, and I go there and I read some comics. There's other ones where they have Golden Age books. Often, if you just search the title and then read online, you can find digital versions of most comics. And that's what I do. I'm very often, finding myself curious what the interiors are, and that's really the way comics were designed. The cover is supposed to titillate you and get you excited about what's inside and make you want to buy it, so you will read what's inside. So often I will get interested and curious about what's that inside a comic, and I'll go out and read it on one of these online sites. So those are typically the ways I do it. I know some people really do enjoy having that experience of flipping through the pages and the smell of the comic and all that. But and sometimes I do that. I do actually flip through some of my lower grade comics that I don't really care if they're going to get mangled or not, because they're already mangled. But for the most part, I prefer to read online. I actually like the fact that I can zoom in onto the panels that I like, or read the text a little bit easier. Especially as I get older, I find that I need to do that. So I prefer to read my comics online. So that's it. Okay, next question comes from Quasi Terrible. Do you use any program to keep track of your collection? And how much have you spent on everything? So what I do to keep track is I use Cover Price. I actually think that Cover Price, in terms of like any of these platforms that allow you to track your books, is possibly the best. The reason I like Cover Price, and this isn't a non-paid ad, like I feel like I'm doing a pitch here, is I like the fact that all you have to do is you type in the title. It already gives you like the ability to select what the grading company is and what the grade of the book that you think it is, or raw if it is a raw book, and then it'll pull up all the data about that book. So all you do is you type in that title, and then you can easily add your books. I've added about 1,000 of my books in Cover Price. Not nearly finished in terms of doing that work. Every so often I procrastinate, like often, and I haven't really entered in all my data, but I plan to do that. But that's one method that I use. I've mentioned this in the past, that another thing that I'll do is I buy a lot of stuff from my comic shop. I buy a lot of stuff from eBay, and I buy a lot of stuff from like Heritage Auctions. And you can actually download all of those past sales histories from those sites that you've made purchases on. And what I do is I have all of that information in a database, like basically an Excel file that shows how much I spent on everything, how much what the grade is, all the notes related to the books, and when I purchased them. So I have a pretty good archive of all my collection through that. I actually recommend that as a system. So that's my backup to Cover Price. And eventually I'm trying to transfer all that information into Cover Price. But for now, that's how I do it. So I've spent too much on comics. So I have no idea how much I've spent, but I know it's a lot. But that's part of the fun of the hobby. So let's get into the next question. August Cosme asked, what are the top 3 most undervalued comics of the Golden Age? He put Amazing Adventures #4 as one of his picks. Amazing Adventures #4 is the robot cover, and if you watch my Friday cover challenge that I did on Friday, where I talked about robot covers, I showed Amazing Adventures #4, which is basically this robot and he's kissing a girl. It's a very beautiful painted cover. That book is very underrated. And I would actually say the company that produces that book is underrated. So the company that produces Amazing Adventures #4 is Ziff Davis, and they produced a lot of like sci-fi and horror titles, some romance as well, and they did amazing stuff. Like just amazing artwork went into their books. However, they're very inexpensive, and you can pick up most of them like for a fraction of what similar cool covers would go for in other by other titles. I don't know why that's the case, but it is the case. So personally, I think it's a good thing because I've been picking up a lot of those books. And when I bought my Amazing Adventures #4, I thought, wow, this is a steal. This book is so awesome. I don't know why it's so cheap. One of my favorite robot covers. Just a brilliant cover. Yeah. So my 3 choices, and I'm going to pick 3 that I kind of wanted to pull from my collection to show you. And I want to explain each of them. So first of all, like picking 3 books, like whatever it is, top 3 books of the golden age, for example, that are underrated. So it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to say, oh, if I could think of 3 books that these are the books that I pick, well, it's really hard to do that. Generally, what most people would do is think about titles or genres that are underrated. So, for example, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about what are the genres, like romance, good girl, horror, superhero, western, sci-fi, war. So those are all the major genres. And then I was thinking, which of those genres are undervalued? And what you could do is just say, well, okay, I know westerns are fairly underrated because right now nobody's really interested in westerns. So there's a buying opportunity within the westerns comics. So if you like that though, but for me, I don't really like westerns. I don't really get into them. There are exceptions to that, and I can get into that a bit more. But my exceptions to that would be that books that are good girl art covers. So Cowpuncher or Cowboy Romances has some really awesome covers that are good girl and westerns that I think are fairly affordable for what they are. You know, they're cheaper than the typical good girl art, but they are just as good. They have some really great covers, like some awesome bondage covers. And I think that's an opportunity. However, I did pick 3 books. So with all that babble, where I'm like explaining it, I did kind of think about some 3 books that I think are kind of underrated and undervalued. And I'm going to show you the first one, and I showed this in a recent unboxing when I was pretty excited to get it. My friend Steve Gentner helped me get this book, actually, because I wasn't able to bid on it, and he was able to bid on it for me. This is Captain Marvel Jr. number 115. Now, why do I say this book is underrated? Well, it has 2 things going for it. It is a superhero book, okay? It is also a pre-code horror kind of style book. The reason I say it's pre-code horror is just the cover itself. You know, he's literally popping the eyes out of this monster. That's pretty gruesome. It is pretty horrific. It's one of the more horrific covers from the Golden Age, actually. I can't think of that many more horrific covers. Like you think of the melting face cover, or the one where you know the guy's literally ripping off his face, like, and you see that he's like a skeleton underneath. There's like a bunch of covers like that, but this one is pretty crazy. I mean, it's like literal eyeballs with all the eye sockety stuff coming out. Just pretty over the top. Now, why is this underrated? So this goes for, I would say, anywhere from the low 200s in that range all the way up to about $3,000. So pretty affordable. Like, so a high grade, I mean, I'm talking like highest grade on the census, goes for about $3,000. Now you compare that to like, you know, Chamber of Chills or some of these other books that have that horror element and crazy covers, and they can go for literally thousands of dollars even in a 0.10. So just totally different ballpark in terms of books. Now you might say, well, okay, those other books might have a lower census count and therefore they can command those bigger numbers. Well, the census count on this is 46. A lot of those other books is similar. It's about the same. It's about 40, maybe 50. So this book is as rare, it's as gruesome, and it also has a superhero that is relevant to nowadays. This character was just in a movie recently. This is Captain Marvel Jr. He was in the movie Shazam 2. So a lot of, like, this to me, for these reasons, is a very underrated book. And when you see it, it's just an awesome cover. I just think it's a great cover. So I was pretty excited to get it in my collection even. And it's a hard one to find, believe it or not. So just an underrated book in my opinion. That's the first one. Next book, and this is something that I really do think is an underrated theme. So if you've watched my channel, you'll notice that I pick up some kind of key Black American, or whatever, I'd say black, books that would be relevant to that market. And I think they're interesting in terms of historical significance. And what I've noticed is, like, if you look at All Negro Comics #1, or certain key comics or certain key artists that are black from the golden age, they command big money because there's a lot of black Americans that have big money and they are very race conscious, and they will support their own group. And what I've noticed is there is a definite trend for that, where some of these key black centric comics have really commanded some big money. And that's why the book that I'm about to show is one that I would say is totally underrated, and should be worth a lot more. And it's this one, Crown Comics #3. Now this is a Matt Baker creation inside that I'm going to get into. This is not a Matt Baker cover from what I can determine. It's not clear who did the cover, but Matt Baker did do the interior, and he did a story about a character named Vuda. And Vuda is the first black American character for the most part, like a comic character. Not black American, he's African, sorry. But he is a black character, and he's the very first black superhero, or hero, I should say. And it makes this book a very significant key for that reason. And it's key not just because of that he's the first black hero, but he's also done by a phenomenal artist, Matt Baker, who is also black, and therefore highly desirable for that reason too. This book is very low on the census as well. There's only 9 of them on the census, which makes it, or is it 9 or 10? Actually, I want to get that right. 10. There's 10 on the census. I just remembered. So there's only 10 of these on the census. So that means it's extremely rare. And it's a book that you can pick up pretty cheaply, compared to other books that have as much significance to them. So, for example, I paid $850, or actually $840 for this book. Now, why did I pay so much? Well, it's a Promise pedigree, so it's a Promise from the Promise collection. Now, if it wasn't from the Promise collection, I probably could have gotten this book for around $400 to $500 range. So So already, that gives you a sense of how inexpensive this book is. You compare that to, other Golden Age characters, and they command much bigger money. Like first Sheena, for example, will command as much as like 3,000 or 4,000 in a low grade, like a really low grade. And this is like a 7.5. This is a high grade book, and I only paid $800 for it. So my point is that this is a very underrated book, and I see as one as that, as a lot of these, collectors, black collectors, get into the hobby more and really learn about Golden Age comics. This is the kind of book that they would seek. This is because it is historically significant, and you don't have to be like, I'm not black, spoiler, but. You don't have to be a black person to appreciate it. I've never understood identity politics, because I can appreciate any character for the character. I don't have to, be the same as the character in the comic. So that's why I really love this book. I think it's a really great book. I love the history behind it. Love the fact that it's created by one of my favorite artists, Matt Baker. He's just a phenomenal artist, and I just really recommend this book. So that's number 2. The third one is an interesting one. This one I picked up also very affordably. It's one that I think has several things going for it. I like superheroes, and I think that is currently where the market is. So the reason I was thinking about showing some Westerns, or showing some like other, like romance even, that are a little bit underrated. In my opinion. Well, you can't force the market to appreciate something. So a lot of the time we kind of do that. We say, oh, if the market only understood how cool these are, why don't they appreciate Westerns or whatever it is? Well, it is what it is. You can't force the market to be what it is, to change that way. Westerns are just not popular anymore, and I'm not sure if they will ever be popular again. That could be the case, and but it could change. Who knows? Pick up Westerns if you really think that Westerns are going to be great. Pick them up. If you like them, pick them up. But right now it is about superheroes, and I want to show a book that I think is a good choice for an underrated book. This is All Flash Comics number 12. This is the first appearance of the Thinker. It's also a cool Flash cover, like Golden Age Flash. Right now they're going to do a Flash movie. And this character, the Thinker, was featured in Suicide Squad 2. I think it was a later version of the character, to tell you the truth. But still, the Thinker. He died in the movie. But, this is a Golden Age book. Movies don't necessarily impact them as much as more modern books. But my point is, it has a first appearance. It's a Golden Age book. The census count on this book is, I wrote it down, 46. So fairly low census count. Same as the Captain Marvel Jr. And it's a reasonably high grade. I got it for a 6.5. I think I paid $300 for this. $300. Seems cheap. Seems cheap to me. For such a high grade book and for a Golden Age book. I think this book goes for around 500 to 600 now, like not even that much more. You think of other books that are of the similar level, where it's a character that made their first appearance in the Golden Age, and you think also from a title that's kind of major, like All Flash is, Flashes, and I believe is it Hawkman that usually appears with him? Yeah, it's one of those. You would think, it would go for a bit more money. I just think that this is an underrated book. It's a cool book too. So just those are the ones that I picked. I could have picked any others. Like, there's so many I could have picked. It's really hard to say these are the top. It's like, it really depends on what you're interested in. Generally, what I would recommend, if you're going to pick the top 3 of anything, pick your genre. say, okay, what are the 3 most underrated pre-code horror? What are the 3 most underrated romance? What are the 3 most underrated, pick those genres and then really go into those, do some research and figure out which books might kind of correspond to being underrated or undervalued based on what other comparable books would go for. So that's that's my opinion on that one. Hopefully you like that. The next one comes from Ozzy the Comic Book Collector. What is the rarest manga comic you own? Well, actually, when I was preparing for this video, I was really, kind of doing some research on my mangas. I don't really have many mangas, to tell you the truth. And I was thinking, okay, well, manga, kind of loosely termed, is usually, like, whenever I think of manga, I think of those books that are thick and, typical, like Sojin Jump or something like Sojin Jump, things like that, where it's like, books that are a little bit thicker, meant to be read a certain way, and different than American books, comic books that are typical comics. I was planning actually to show Astro Boy #1, and I looked at the census count for that. It's like it's from 1963, I believe, in that era. And there's 100 on the census, so a very rare book for the Silver Age. However, I found a book that's even rarer, that's in my collection, that kind of fits to this question a bit better. And it also has lots of key first appearances. And it's this one, Mix Zine #1. Now, you're probably wondering what's so special about this book. Well, this book happens to be the very first American appearance of Sailor Moon. You'll see her name's right there, and that's her right on the cover. And it's also the first appearance of Parasite and Ice Blade. Also, I think I want to say something else is in it, but not sure. But the point is, this book only has 4 on the census, so it's much rarer than the Astro Boy, and high-grade copies of this go for about $500. So the one that if people had, they would probably get it slabbed, and yet it is really low on the census. Like, as I said, 4 on the census. A very hard book to find. And it came out in 1997. So kind of a cool book. One that I think is totally underrated as well. I forgot how much I paid. I didn't pay much for it. Mine's like probably a 9, I'd say. So yeah, just a cool book. I thought that was great. Okay. Next question comes from Janet Bailey. Do you have any Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's Dr. Occult issues from In More Fun? No, I don't. So Dr. Occult is a cool character. Basically, the story behind Dr. Occult, I actually went into full detail in a previous question and answer video, but it basically, he was taken as a young child, like a very young child, with his sister, and they were going to be sacrificed to raise the devil. Like, typical parenting. So they were being sacrificed, and what happened was, instead of raising the devil, they got a different demon, which was Koth. And Koth basically, as this was happening, what's called the Seven, which is this sort of secret society, stole the 2 kids away, and sort of ended this sacrifice. But the 2 children had some powers as a result of all this craziness, and they became paranormal, ghost hunters, basically paranormal phenomena, ghost hunters kind of thing. And they'd fight, they'd find ghosts and demons and different things, and that was them in the Golden Age. Now, they made their first appearance, Dr. Occult made his first appearance in New New Fun number 6, which is kind of the precursor to More Fun. And that's from October of 1935, so like a fairly old book. And he made his first appearance in More Fun number 10, and his last appearance in issue number 32. Issue number 10 is from 1936, and issue 32 is from 1938. My issues of, I do have like a few issues from More Fun Comics, but they are much later. So these early ones are really hard to get. The interesting thing about Dr. Occult, and this is just a bonus thing about him, is he is considered to be the first costumed superhero for DC. Maybe of the Golden Age, they were saying. He is a character that normally appears just like in a regular clothes, but the Seven gave him special clothing that he wore when he was fighting against Koth. So that makes him costumed and making him the first Golden Age costumed character. So kind of cool character. I don't have any of his books from the Golden Age, sadly, but definitely a cool character created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. So yeah, and he came out years before Superman. So other great thing about him. So 3 years before Superman. Okay, last question comes from K. Moonin, and he wrote, have you had any luck finding your NightWing comics? Yes, I found them, but then I lost them again. I don't know where I put them. So I was actually looking, and I was going to bring out the NightWing ones. What happened is I put it in a box just recently. I found them, and I was like, oh, I found my NightWing, and I can finally answer his question. And then I put them, then again, I put them into like an unsorted box, where I have like about 20 of these unsorted boxes where I have to go through them. And then I just sort of stuffed it away, but I don't know where I stuffed it away. Did I stuff it away in that cabinet or the one behind me? I don't know where I put it. So I'd have to go through all 20 of those boxes in order to find it, which I didn't have the time to do. So sorry. I do have them. I just don't know where they are. It's not a very big collection of NightWing. I have maybe about, say, like 10 NightWing comics. It's not like a massive collection or anything. But I did look at one point and find them. So I know that they're here. That's the good point. But also, you asked, what is your favorite comic within your entire collection? And actually, this is one of those challenging questions, more challenging than any of these other questions. People ask me, oh, what's the meaning of life? Well, that's pretty easy. Comparative to this question, what's your favorite comic? And it's sort of like asking, which is your favorite child? That's always going to go bad. But for me, it changes on a daily basis. But for today, for this video, I'm picking a very specific comic that I think is a good choice. And I've shown this comic many, many times. I have to show it many times. I have to get the value that I paid for this comic out of showing it. But it is a comic that I really do love. And it's one that I never thought I would own. And it's my All-Star Comics number 8. This is the first appearance of Wonder Woman. And this comic is super special to me because of the fact that it really signifies that dream as a comic collector, that I believe that, hey, I might never own this book. I don't think I'll ever own that book, like an action one. Like that's like that dream that, if I could pick one book that would be so cool to own, you'd think that way. Well, for me, it was this book. And the reason it was this book is I really liked Wonder Woman. I always thought she was an underrated character. I always thought she was a cool character. I always like female characters generally. And I wanted to have her first appearance. And I thought this, having her first appearance would be a really cool thing. And I also didn't think it was a possible thing because this is one of the top 10 Golden Age books in terms of value. And if you can achieve that goal of getting like a top 10 book, well, then it sort of opens up the possibility of being able to obtain any book. And that's why I really like this book. It's not just the fact that it's a cool first appearance, but it's something when I look at it, I think, wow, I can get that book, then I can get this other book or whatever. Like, you know, it sort of makes me feel like I can realize my dreams. And I think, I don't know, it's inspirational to me, and that's why it's my favorite book in my collection. So, but ask me tomorrow and I'll say a totally different book. It's, as I said, it's like picking your favorite child. But I hope you enjoyed my answers to these questions. If you have your own question that you'd like to ask, put it in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer it. So thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and bye for now.